Okay, let's get started. And I want to welcome you all to our Weekend Wellness Hour today on Saturday. I don't even know what day, June 20th, 2020. And we're here with Sean Murphy, a good friend of mine who I had just spoke a little bit to prior to this and learned a little bit more about his history. So let me tell you about the things I know about him. And then he can share all those wonderful things that I just learned about him. So I met Sean in
You might need to go in and mute
20th,
that.
2020, and we're here with Sean Murphy, a good friend of mine who I had just spoke a little bit to. So I met Sean in Kyle Wilson's Inner Circle Mastermind, and then he can share. I'm not sure how to get that to stop. There you go. Did it stop?
Yes.
Okay. We're good. Okay, sorry about that, guys. So I met Sean Murphy in good friend of mine and mentor, Kyle Wilson's Inner Circle Mastermind. Kyle and I really resonated well. And so when I met Sean, I was floored by him. I knew he had done some international speaking and he's a trainer. And he's also a 3-time Amazon #1 bestseller author, as well as a life coach and a self-talk coach and trainer. But he also, one of the reasons I have him on today is this thing that we have, all of us, this disease to please. And he has a certification in addiction to approval coaching and training. He's also spoken all around the world in 30 different countries, and some of his speeches have been translated into 40 languages. Now, this is just a little bit about what I know about this man, but there is a lot more. And I would love it if you would share us a little bit more about your journey to where you are, Sean, because I think it's a fascinating story and it just shows how much wisdom that you have to share with us today. And we're very excited to have you on.
Well, Dr. Amy, thank you so much. And thank you for all that you do. Again, we're always in awe of people who are worthy of awe. And when I heard that you run 100-mile marathons, I'm like, wait a minute. She's all of like 5'0", or probably, she's just, how do you have enough air to do that? And that was the funny thing. She taught us how to breathe, and it changed my life. So I'm just in awe of you as well. We're probably president of each other's fan clubs today, and that's a good thing.
Yes.
So my life started, I grew up on a farm in Ohio. And I barely made it through high school, and I drove by a lot of colleges. And my daddy always said something I'll never forget: the one in the front of the room with the pen makes the most money. So I learned how to get in front of the room, whether that be teaching, training, whether it was getting in front of the room, getting yelled at by my principal, the dean of students. All that to say, there was a couple of things I'm not good at. And school was one of them, in a way that it was the way they marked me, the way they wanted to identify me. I didn't do well in the educational side. I was wildly educated, but I had a 0.9 grade point average my first semester in school. Not who you would really want to go, let me go follow this guy. So I say all of that to say this. My goal in life, my mission is to be a better father and a better husband every single day. And I do that by putting smiles in the world so that they will reverberate and show back up for my family when I'm not around them. I know it sounds kind of utopic in style, but that's how I live every day. And that's what I love about you. This idea, this session that we're doing right now, the ability to give people information that they wouldn't normally have, the ability to help people who are looking to tune up their day, to sharpen their saw, and they're not sure, because we now live in a society where if somebody's saying, well, there's a fee for that, they need to know what your resume is. And now you're giving them a chance to hear your resume, to reach into your Rolodex. Listen, I've got a chance to interact with some of your folks that I'd have never had the chance to before. You've come on my morning calls and shared, and people have said that's one of the best conversations they were ever a part of. You teaching them the fundamental. You think we know how to breathe. Next, I'm waiting for you to tell me we're all walking wrong.
Oh, I'll get to that. Don't worry.
So that's me in a nutshell. I've Again, I've been people ask me to show up like this, probably because of what Zig Ziglar said best. Sales is a transference of enthusiasm. And so I usually keep my enthusiasm at a pretty high level. And sometimes people buy that.
Well, you have just that little touch of authenticity and genuine aspect about you. So you know how to draw people in. You're pulling on the rope and they're getting closer and closer and then they can't get away.
Walk this way.
Exactly. So can you tell me a little bit about your certification for the addiction to approval? Because we do have this disease to please. So I'm curious, what is that?
It is. And so here's what happens. We're 90, I'm going to throw a number out, and I don't know, but my research shows 98, 99% of what we believe in was never ours to begin with.
Yeah.
1% of the population think, 2% think they think, the other 97% would rather die than think. So when we get into these moments and we have this herd mentality, here's how addiction to approval starts. It starts before we can speak. We learn that if we cry, we get fed. We learn that if we smile, you smile, I don't get spanked. Right? So we learn before dialogue is ever a possibility, no matter the language. We start to communicate at an emotional level. And this addiction to approval is at an emotional level. So now all of a sudden I can communicate, I can walk. And if I want to test my boundaries, I usually get a little spank on the bottom or I get told no. And then as I find that I can pick weeds and give them to mom, and she goes, "Oh, it's the most beautiful thing." And it's a weed, right? It's a dandelion before the little white things blow off. That's where we wind up. If I make you smile, my life gets better. Yeah, I understand that's pleasing, but here's what happens now. All of a sudden we get into school and now I've got to get my A's and B's. My parents were home if I came home with something that didn't have a closed loop on it, right? So a C was good, B's were better. But all of that to say, then we go into work, then we go into a job where we work for a boss who determines our success, determines our promotion based upon, yeah, we hit criteria, we hit a baseline. But there's some people who may not advance because they're not in the inner circle. Now, all of a sudden, what happens is that we have this addiction to approval and we set up our whole lives. And then somebody wants to go be an entrepreneur and they get told, you can do this. And here's the challenge. They know they can. A mentor said this to me one time. It's not, your desire is amazing. It's your plan that sucks. Yeah. And the plan is that we can't out-talk ourselves to get over the stories that an old boyfriend, an old girlfriend, what your aunt said to you when you were 7 years old. I promise you, everybody who's listening to this has a childhood scar that if we had a conversation would pop up. I had a woman who's down in Miami. She's on the novellas in the Latin world. She's a novella actress.
Oh, nice.
It was a Barbie doll when she was 6. She wasn't invited into the house where they were having a little Barbie party. And she came onto my call the other day with a Barbie with a huge star on the back and the beautiful red dress. And she was in tears. She said, I finally realized I could buy my own Barbie. But for 30 plus years, that held her back, that held her stuck. And you've watched this metamorphosis of addiction to that old story. Right? You know this. And you've got some amazing folks who are going to be watching this, runners, right? Go to the Bannister, 4-minute mile. Nobody could do it. Nobody could do it. Nobody could do it. He did it, and like 23 people broke it in the next 60 days.
Yeah.
Right? You teach, we can't breathe. I can't breathe. I breathe right. I diaphragmatic breathing. No, what about your side muscles? What about this, getting the air to flow in here? And you're like, that's not normal. But once they do that, people who had severe conditions, Jeffrey on our call, on the mastermind call with the memory and marketing, the next day he's up. The next day he's up in the afternoon, and you did that simply by teaching. So that's what I do, is this addiction to an old story that somebody's got to have the courage like you to stand in front of them and go, that's not true anymore.
And it's hard. It's really hard to go against the grain of society. I've listened to so many podcasts lately, and a lot of people who are kind of out there who are really making an impact and influence, one of the biggest things and advice that they give is whatever people are doing, do the exact opposite. And now I'm hearing that more and more, which again, I had that disease to please. I've had it my whole entire life, growing up with a mother who was never satisfied or happy with me, hated me all the time, always tried to please. And I continually pushed against it. And, going the entrepreneur route in the past year and a half, there's not as much of the approval. There's no one just saying, oh, you're doing a great job. There's no boss that's saying, oh my gosh. And that was a big shift. When we're used to following the norms of society, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, you have a family, you follow those guidelines. There's always someone above you that is giving you their approval. So you're following the structure. But when you break away from that structure and you start to have to make decisions on your own and live with the consequences of those decisions, there's a shift. And part of it was learning that mistakes are a good thing. That was a big, huge mind shift change, I have to say, because I tried to be perfect on everything, and to my detriment, which increased my stress, which increased my tension, which I'm really glad I know how to breathe now. I know. It's funny. People who know me now don't think I'm high strung and wound up, but people who knew me from like a couple years ago and prior to that think I'm like the most wound up person, tight everything, but I've shifted quite a bit. So I have to say my mindset has changed quite a bit, learning to make mistakes and not seeking that approval as much or more.
Well, so here's the thing on that. Mm-hmm. We've done research over 200,000 high dollar ticket salespeople, right? That's a field of approval. 200,000. 99% are addicted to approval. Now, if you ask them a 1 out of 10, they're a 10. Everyone's a 10. Well, they don't. Well, no, I'm not really a 10. But when you ask them some basic fundamental questions, do you feel uncomfortable sitting and eating by yourself? Right? Have you ever not asked a coworker for help for fear that they would think you don't know your job? Have you ever not asked anybody out on a date because they might say no? These basic things, we can't get you to a 0 on addiction to approval. Yeah. But we can take you from a 10. If you go from a 10 to a 7, you just entered into the world-class arena. You may not be number 1, but you're in world class. You go from a 7 to a 6, your life has changed forever. Yeah. You look at baseball, right? 200, you're a couple $100,000, you're high, almost $1 million contracts. 250, $1 million. 300, multiple $1 million. 325, forget it, write your own check. And that's 3 out of 10 fails. Yeah, it's amazing. We need to use kind of that example and apply it to the rest of our life so we can be looking at more gratitude for what we have accomplished, even if it's something small. Like this morning, I picked a zucchini from my garden. I was really excited. Plus, I'll get to eat it later. But still, I accomplished something. It's taking those little things too. And I imagine when you're coaching people, there is some good to seeking some type of approval, right? I mean, at a certain level. Well, and there is, and the approval is being able to thank yourself, to have gratitude. I know it sounds crazy, but we have multiple minds in our head. See, when I sit somebody down, I'll say, listen, picture an audience. And the audience is every story you've ever had. See, in self-talk, which I also dabble in that world as well, everything you said, anything that's ever been said to you has been recorded in your brain. That which you repeat on a regular basis becomes permanent. We have 70,000 thoughts a day. We're conscious of 3,000 to 5,000 thoughts. Where are the other 65,000 thoughts coming from? Yesterday, yesterdecade, yesteryear. Now, a lot of those thoughts are dealing with your autonomic nervous system, your digestion. They're still at 14,000 words a minute at a subconscious level. You having all of these conversations of yesterday, of you now having a new microphone. It's like, this is new and I'm not used to this. And I got my microphone and the last time I did this, the sound cut in and out. And there's all of these things that run through our mind and I'm not good enough. Wait a minute. You got world-class photography behind you. Did you think about that today? Yeah. No, because that's something I do naturally. Well, it was unnatural for a while. So self-talk in a reasonably positive household, reasonably positive. You hear, no, you're not good enough, can't work, any negative. You've heard negative 117,000 times. You've heard positive in a reasonably positive household about 5,000 times. So when I sit down with my students, I say, do you understand math? And now how do we replace that? Through meditation, through breathing, through a variety of ways of hanging around people. If you're the average of the 5 people you hang around, one of you needs to get the heck out of the room quick.
Yeah.
Right? So when we talk about this addiction to approval is happening right now. There's people who are watching us going, yeah, but those two are lucky. They know Kyle Wilson. We didn't know Kyle Wilson before we knew Kyle Wilson. Right. We just decided the things that were good, we wanted more of those and less of the things that are not so good.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I remember, gosh, back in February, deciding to go on this cruise and thinking, okay, I could put it off for a year, or I could just jump and make the decision to go in 2 weeks. And I'm like, I just had this feeling, this intuition, like I'm going to just go for it. Boom. That's how I met Kyle and got to talk to him. But we sometimes have to just go for it. Just take that step, even if it's uncomfortable, even if you have no idea where it's going to lead, and just go with an open heart and just say, okay, let's see where this takes me. And how can I put myself out there? And kind of like you said earlier, it's like sometimes we get afraid, and we're afraid we're going to get more no's because we've had so many no's. And it's like, when you come to think about it, at the end of the day, the end of your life, why not take that chance? It's really not going to kill you to go and say hi to someone. It's really not going to damage you. And if they turn away, that's okay. Then that just means they're not supposed to be in your life. And that's kind of how I've come to terms with things, which helps with the self-talk too.
It does. And the challenge is that out in society today, Dr. Joe Dispenza says, he'll go on stage and he'll say to everybody in the audience, and he'll typically open up and he'll say, raise your hand if you think your thoughts can influence your day. And everybody raises their hand. How many of you took time today to influence your day? We're so habitualized. And now we call it PC. So it's PC habitualization, politically correct. I was on a call with Tiffany Malott the other day, an African-American woman, and she had 4 Caucasians on the call with her. And she said, I want to have a deep discussion. And I got to tell you, I know Tiffany. We've never done a dialogue before, and especially at this level. But she was like, we talked afterwards, and she said, everybody else said they were afraid to get on the call. I'm like, yeah, I was wondering why that was too. I heard them say that.
Wow.
I said, because this isn't about being afraid. This is about making sure we bring value. Jim Rohn said, if you want to become wealthy, bring value. You want to become super wealthy, become valuable to valuable people. So I became valuable to Tiffany in that moment. You become valuable to us every time you lead one of the mentoring sessions, the breathing sessions. And people say all the time, they ask me, Sean, you do your calls 7 days a week. Isn't that a little much? I say, for who? Yeah. You do yours 5 days a week. And I'm like, when are you going to do the other 2? I need to breathe on the other 2. But here's the thing. I'm going to talk to everybody who's thinking about stepping into the world of sharing their voice. You're marketing to a marching band. Don't anticipate everybody staying there. You're not talking to an audience. You're talking to a marching band. And every 3 days, you'll say the same thing over and over. I promise you, there's people who are in your community, people in my community, who go, I've never heard that before. I go, other than the 480 times I've said it every morning on the calls. Oh, it just sunk in. Yeah. So there's never too much of a good thing.
That's good. Yeah. And I appreciate that too, because sometimes you wonder if something's really resonating with people, or if they become just tone deaf to it and are kind of tuning it out. But at the same time, one of the things I tell people when I work with them one-on-one is I'm constantly cueing them. So if I'm doing a virtual session and I'm looking at their rib cage, their armpit, and I'm constantly talking to them and telling them, okay, feel this, and I repeat it over and over again. And so many people have come back and said to me, I'm so glad that you've done that, because now when I do this at home, I can hear your voice. And so it's just subconsciously or sometimes consciously, they can hear my voice saying, and so their body responds and follows those instructions. So a lot of times repetition is a great thing. And like you said, I have to say things about 20 times just to get people to let their belly button go as they're exhaling. Do you know how hard that is? I've come up with so many different ways just to get the people to do the opposite when they exhale. But as soon as they get it, woo, they're excited. And it's like, oh my gosh. And they can feel the difference.
Well, and this comes back to muscle memory.
Mm-hmm.
We think that we set goals. So I'm going to set a goal to drink a half gallon of water a day. Not a hard goal, not life-changing, could be life-changing. But if I do it, outstanding. If I don't do it, I'm pretty normal. But the only way we can set goals for the future is based on the memory of the past. Yeah. And so when people say to you, when you're doing this, you entered into the entrepreneurial world, you entered into the online education world by doing inside of your community, your nightly breathing sessions. And people say, have you lost your mind? See, when somebody says that to me, I giggle inside because I've lost my place in their mind. They're not asking me if I lost my mind. What they're saying is you're lost in my mind.
That's a good point.
I can't find you anymore. You're different.
Mm-hmm.
And see, that allows me to know I'm moving in a correct direction. And if I'm getting more input and feedback that's positive, I want everybody to lose their mind around me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you teach people, listen, me going into a 5K is a lot different than a 100-mile ultra marathon. Mm-hmm. I can't even imagine that until somebody like you comes along and says, well, yes, you can do that. And I can teach you breathing, and I can watch the video of the gentleman who crosses I guess it was the New York Marathon, and everybody's trying to get him. Right. And you walk over to him and you whisper in his ear, nice shoes. And all of a sudden he stands up.
It's a little different than that, but close enough, right?
Well, my point, I wanted everybody to go, is that what she said? Was that the secret sauce she said? That's a nice shoe. No, she walked him through releasing an old story in his head about as soon as he crosses the finish line, he's probably not going to be able to breathe. The other part of that was when he crossed the finish line, was he not number one when he crossed the finish line?
So he probably would have finished the race. It was in Michigan in the Kalamazoo Marathon. And when I saw him at the beginning of the race, he was flying. But by the end, he was in severe pain and cramping. And I passed him like mile 20 something, 21, 22. And he was just limping and cramping. I could tell that he was struggling. And so when I crossed the finish line, and then he came behind me a few minutes later, and his whole legs was in spasm. And we put him in, the medical staff, converged on him and put him in a wheelchair. And so I wasn't supposed to be in the finish line area. I was waiting for my cousin Jim to come. He was behind me in the race, and I was waiting to get some pictures of him. So because they were so preoccupied with helping this gentleman, and he had horrible pain, he was grimacing, clutching. They were trying to get some doctors right there. So I went up beside him and I just whispered in his ear, not about shoes, but I said, just follow my instructions on your breathing. I'm going to put my hand on your chest and just help guide your breathing, and just follow the same breathing that I go through on my nightly breathing sessions. I just said, let your chest sink under my hand as you follow my words. And he did that. And within 30 seconds, his eyes popped open. He jumps up from the wheelchair. He's like, I'm fine. I'm totally fine. What's wrong with me? My gosh, my leg, all the cramping, it went away. And I could tell he was kind of out of it still. And I just slithered back over to the corner because I didn't want to get kicked out of the area because my cousin hadn't come through yet. But I heard him talking to his friend who was on the other side of the gate saying, man, are you okay? You need to see a doctor. And all the medical staff are still there. He's like, no, I'm totally fine. I need food. Let's go get food. And he takes off walking, and people are like, what just happened here? Like, this guy was typically what happens after a race like that. When you're in that severe, they take you back, you get saline, they check your blood sugar, they will do different things, maybe massage, different things to get your cramps out of you. But they weren't prepared for someone to come and teach this man how to breathe to calm down his nervous system so the muscle stopped firing abnormally. And he did that. And I don't think he even remembers, to be honest. He was so out of it. And then he was so shocked when he stood up without pain that he's like, what is going on? But it works. We changed how he experienced that race. And I hope, well, I don't know if he was conscious enough during all of it, but I hope he would use those techniques again so he doesn't have those issues again. Because he was.
Well, that goes back to two things: the habitualization, where we're
Mhm.
already at. See, the brain looks for two things: will it kill me, or how fast can I recognize the pattern?
Yeah.
And when you walked him through that, he didn't recognize the pattern, but he was willing to listen to get out of pain, which is usually the only time we run into people is when they're in enough pain, whether it be financially, emotionally, spiritually, right? Society-wise or wellness-wise, or even faith-wise, right? The 6 areas of life. When they're in enough pain is when they seek service, but when they get out of the pain, they don't step into the joy. They just get out of pain. Too many people are winning, are working to not lose versus working to win.
Yep.
See, what you teach us, you have us put a straw in our mouth and we learn to breathe and we're like, I'm like out of breath. Yeah, that's normal. Why hell? I don't like that. I don't like feeling like I'm going to pass out and you're teaching me how to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter whether it's teaching you how to breathe, how to communicate with people, how to stand in front of a room, how to do a podcast, how to deal in the profession that I'm in, MLM, me loving more. It's all about this old story, and the old story is Aunt Sally somewhere. Now, if there's anybody listening to this, that's Sally. But there's Aunt Sally that goes, you're not good enough.
Yeah.
You'll never be enough. And that just resonates through us. And when we can go back and change that old story, when somebody can follow your words, because here's the thing, your words did not teach. He listened to teach his own body.
Right.
That's where we think everybody's going to do this for us. Nobody's going to do this for you. Nobody's going to breathe for you. Nobody's going to build your business for you. Nobody's going to run the 26 point whatever it is for you. Nobody's going to run the 5K for you. You've got to do it. The challenge is that if you run it and you fall short of your goal, did you fall short of your goal? At least you did it. And that's the hard part to get people to dive into. You've got some elite athletes who are part of your community. You've got some elite people who are elite in their field in photography. They look at your pictures and they go, oh, if I could go to the Arctic or Antarctic one time, that'd be so cool. Well, buy a ticket. Wow, but I can't afford it. Well, then get good enough that Jim Carrey says, be so good they can't ignore you.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
So
it's true. And one of the things you also said is, besides we respond to pain or we go into find a way for making something a habit, is so often, and I see this, and you probably see this in kind of your world as well, that once we get out of that pain cycle and we get that relief, we're like, oh, okay, now I can go back to just regular living. They don't incorporate these new skills into a new habit. They fall back into the old one, which is why we get into a cycle and we continue to need help. And that's one thing that I find that's really fascinating is with the mind, just like any other like athletic sport, your mind, you have to train just like it's an athletic event. So if you want to change your self-talk, change the way that you approach the world, have more positivity, it has to be a daily practice and even multiple times a day. I'm sure, is that part of kind of what you talk to people about?
So when I deal with my students and people who are part of my team and organization, every hour they got to check in.
Oh, neat.
And what I do is and here's the check-in. It's not to check in with me and tell me how they did. It's for them to check in with them and determine, did I move closer to my goal or farther away? Mm-hmm. And I ask you this, I ask anybody listening to this, is your life worth a minute an hour? Because all we're doing is adjusting the sail. Most people, we've all heard this in personal development. Most people die at 21. We bury them at 65.
Yeah.
So when you look at this, when you deal with a world-class trainer, they are working at every essence. They're putting little tags on you and they're watching your muscles move and they're going, here's where you need to do this. And you go, I can't do that because your memory says you can't do that. I can't breathe. I can't collapse my chest and move it away from my bra. I'm not wearing a bra. So you got to do these things. I have them check in every hour.
Mhm.
And it's not time management. You cannot manage time. You can only manage your energy in time. And that's what determines how successful you'll be, is what's your energy level, right? You teach this on the ultra marathons from mile 60, 70, you run in with people, and it's about converting their energy to not go, oh my God, I'm dying, to breathing. And all of a sudden they finish the race. And it's like, I don't know how that happened. We didn't manage the time. We didn't manage the running. We managed your energy that allowed you to now control every fiber in your body. So
Yes,
when we
which
sit
is
there and we
true.
have a conversation, check in every hour, I would encourage your audience to say, set a timer every hour. Do I feel better than I did in the last hour? Because if you don't, I would adjust something. Go get a coffee, get up for a walk, move. Motion creates emotion. Emotion then allows you to have a little bit more, all of the great chemicals that run in your body. You got the greatest pharmacy in the world. There's a placebo. How many of you know there's a nocebo? I can give you Tylenol and you go, Tylenol doesn't work. And guess what? Your headache doesn't go away, even though it did go away. So can you work on having more of what you want and less of what you don't? And I check in more often than you do on a regular basis now. You'll be
It's so true.
surprised how fast an hour goes.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I remember, because I wasn't introduced to the personal development world until a year and a half ago, but I remember growing up when I had a bad day, and you hear the phrase, "Oh, I just want to crawl back into bed and put the covers over my head and go back to sleep."
Yep.
And that used to be my philosophy. When I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, I'm like, "Ugh, okay, let's see how fast this day can go." And now it's not. It's like, okay, I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Okay, how fast can I change it into a day that is enjoyable, pleasing, and I can change my mood around? And like you said, it often involves movement. Or like yesterday, I saw a turkey vulture on a branch about 30 feet away from me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a huge turkey vulture. I'm gonna just sit here and watch it. And like all of a sudden, boom, my day was fantastic. But
You know, it's funny. That's like an oxymoron, a turkey vulture. It's like, what? A what? It's, it's right. Central intelligence, not a chance. So,
yeah.
but here's the thing, words trigger things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm picturing turkey, right? Because the brain is always nexting. Here's another thing that people will learn as they go through it. People who haven't, in my audience, who I've forwarded this to in one of my groups, haven't heard you speak, and your people haven't heard me speak. So they're nexting, and if all of a sudden I'm talking, they're following the sentence, and avocado comes out of my mouth. They're like, "What? Wait a minute, what was that?" We're all nexting in our world. We're running 4 or 5 different potentials of the conversation. That's how you can actually hear me. That's why if I started speaking real fast, for those of you that English isn't your first language, you can still hear me. You can understand me. You have to pay a little bit more focus.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is your brain is nexting, and it can hear these things. We can listen to 218 words a minute, 300 words a minute. We can speak maybe 120. That's understandable, 130, but we can double. We can listen twice as fast. We've all seen those videos that go, and you're like, you heard everything, but you couldn't tell me what it was.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
same thing happens when you start sliding down the slippery slope that I'm not good enough. Your brain will come up with 1,001 reasons why that's absolutely true. Noah St. John in his book, Secret Code to Success, talks about affirmations. The brain looks for 2 things, kill me or recognize a pattern. When we say, why am I not good enough? Why am I not losing weight? Why can't I run 50 miles? Change the way you look at things, Dr. Wayne Dyer said, and the things you look at change. Noah St. John says, change it into an affirmation. Why am I so good at running 50 miles? Now the brain has to answer that. There's no previous record of you asking that question, so it can't go, well, you're 100 pounds overweight. That's why. It doesn't have that answer. You've never run 100K. You've never run 100 miles. It says, well, why am I good? Well, I can do 50. I guess I have the ability to enhance my body, to train some more. I have access to Dr. Amy. I could ask her for questions. And all of a sudden, when you start to answer the questions, why are you so good at fill in the blank, right? You've changed some things in your podcast, in these conversations. Why am I so good at doing this? You ask questions, you wind up changing some things, and all of a sudden it gets easier.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I so good at? Because see, the word why, when we sit with people, this is another part of the pleasing disease, the sickness to the addiction to approval. When you were growing up, the word why only came out of your parents' mouth is when you were in trouble.
Yep.
So whenever you say why, instantly your brain goes to 1,001 reasons of negativity. It nexts in your life all of the things you're not good at. But when you ask, why am I so good at, your brain kind of spins its wheels and a wrench goes in there and it goes, I don't know. Maybe we should go find out the answers for that.
And it's neat because when you ask a question of why like that, there's already a part of an assumption that it's part of you. And so there's an emotional tie to it that you already own it. And it's a good attribute that you have. So that further ingrains it into your body as, okay, this is a part of me. And now I just take on the next challenge, which is great for improving self-talk, positivity, energy. And I know one thing we were talking about earlier was energy pollution, which I think is a very prominent and appropriate topic right now. If you want to share a little bit about your thoughts on energy pollution.
You know, there's a lot of people, there's a lot of opinions out about 5G and 4G and all of these things and all of the energy and living underneath power lines. I happen to be somebody who know about how energy and the closer you live to that stuff, that's why we can stand by a waterfall and feel so great because of the negative ions. But there's this energy pollution that's happening right now that's happening on a global scale that is of just a particular energy. Nothing's good, nothing's bad. God made the world. He looked at it and said, this is good. So everything is good. For those people who want to be able to catapult their business right now, if you're somebody of high energy and high positive emotion, there is a world needing you right now. So this is a great time to launch your business, to be a platform of honor, of strength, of truth that's in your world. There is an audience looking for you right now. If you're watching this and you go, I got to do something different, I would encourage you to start. Well, what do? Start. Done is the new perfect. So all of this energy that resonates, and if we could move at the speed of light and take a telescope and catapult off the earth, and we could go half a light year away, and we look back at the earth, you realize we could watch the first session of I Love Lucy. We could watch the very first playing of the Little Rascals, because energy moves. And if you can move out farther than it, you can look back at it. So energy is everywhere. So what's happening in the UK, I do a global call every morning. What's happening in Serbia, what's happening in Brussels affects all of us. So we need to have this, it would serve us all a little bit better to have a little bit higher energy of joy, of love, of gratitude. I teach all of my students, send out 3 messages of gratitude every day. And those who are in my personal mentorship, they got to send out 100 every day. Every day, send out 100. Why do they need to send out 100? Because they'd probably quit if I told them 200. Yet this changes awesome. Us. And if I can change me, all I can work on is changing the one who hears me. And if they send out 100, I promise you, I know their day. I can tell when they've sent out 50. I go, you only sent out 50. How do you know? I can tell by your energy.
That's awesome. Wow. That's incredible. I mean, I remember my life shifting when I started doing daily gratitudes and writing them down at the evening. But I love the sending out 100. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Well, first, I have to make sure I know 100 people.
It could be 100 instant messages. It could be 100 things on Instagram. Hey, listen, thanks for being you. Hey, thanks for being you.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. See, I do a call every morning. There's anywhere from 50 to 200 people on it. So here's the good news. I get mine out of the way real early. I go, hey, listen, I want to thank you all for being here.
You cheater.
I was going to say, it's not cheating. It's just I've figured out how to leverage time and space. So here's the thing. If we say thank you right now, 1, 2, 3, thank you. Everybody who listens to this for as long as this video is up just got to thank you.
Yes.
Where can you leave the residual effect of joy and gratitude? It's in audios, it's in videos, it's in podcasts.
Yeah, it's interesting. The word thank you is so much more powerful than we realize. I mean, the connection that you make with that word alone, when you tell someone thank you and mean it, like you can feel your heart shift. And the person who's receiving it, if they take the time to listen to it and absorb it and accept it, it's a
Yep.
huge shift in connection between two people or between a group. And it really brings about a more positive energy in the world. And right now we need it. We really
And
do.
you know this from yoga, but you know, if you just do the exercise with somebody just in simple breathing, and you just have them breathe like this, and then you have them turn their hands, they literally fill up their lungs in a different spot. And you
Mhm.
turn it back. So if anybody's watching this while we're talking, just listen, breathe, and breathe. And then all of a sudden turn your hands over and watch what changes in your body. That's
Yeah.
why yoga is so valuable. That's why what you teach in muscle memory and relaxing the body, just a simple shift. People can feel that if they're just doing it right now. They don't have to go into a meditative state. It changes where your body's at. And this, again, open hands, right? Raising your hand. You don't even have to raise your hands up. But these are the simple things that we teach, that you teach in the body, that yoga teaches, right? One of the greatest sutras that's ever been said is a half a sentence. You've tried everything, and now yoga. That's the first line. And I mean, what? You've tried everything. You've tried money. You've tried sex. You've tried this. You've tried that. You've tried movies. You've tried not movies. You've tried and now yoga. Yoga is not about going to stretch yourself in ways you've never been bent before and at 118 degrees. It's about becoming one with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
And
amazing.
learning how to
I'm
seek
just
that
so
peace.
amazed
Well,
with you. I love you.
thank you. I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Can you tell everyone who's listening more about your calls? Because I've been fortunate enough to be a part of them twice. And you had Les Brown on, and I know you do this 7 days a week in the mornings.
Yep.
Sometimes it's a little on the early side for me, even though I do get up early. But I have been able to make the weekend ones a couple times. So can you share what
Sure.
are you doing for all these amazing people around the world?
It's the Daily Awakening. And December 18th, 2018, I had to get out of my own way. And I was literally shaking. I was so frustrated. I was agitated with what was going on. And I know this, my daddy said, unless you're going to do something, keep your mouth shut. Unless you're going to stand up and do something, you can't complain about anything. And it would be better if you do something in a positive light than a negative light. So December 18th, 2018, I started a call called Get Out of Your Effing Way, where the F stood for frustrated, fatigued, or frightened, or maybe the F we all think it is. And 13 people showed up. And I was shocked. I didn't think anybody would show up.
Yeah.
And I said, well, if somebody showed up, I'll show up again the next day. And the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And it went, sometimes there was me and one other person. But now this morning we just did, so it's 7 days a week, 6:30 a.m. Central Standard Time.
Okay.
And then 8:30 on the weekends. So this morning was episode 483, which still, I mean, that's like a lot for me. And
Yeah.
we have conversations about topics, yet it's not a monologue. It's a dialogue just like this.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's 200 people on and there's 13 hands that are raised. And I usually go through all of the hands. And it's anyone from young entrepreneurs, young females who are trying to work in this world and who have been beat up and run sideways and have all of this, especially with social media, right? Some of them, I ask them, what are you selling? Are you selling Louis Vuitton bags? Or are you selling dress? Aren't you an entrepreneur? And they get caught up in the social media that keeps them from being, right? I heard somebody say the other day, it's Tom Ziegler said it on our call, our mastermind call, our inner circle call, anti-social media. So I work with those individuals, and it's from this morning, I think there was probably 9 countries on it. It's been as high as 18 different countries get on the call.
That's incredible.
It's all in English, so it's not simultaneous translated.
Yeah.
And it's about entrepreneurs who are doing their best to figure out how they get out of their own way. So now I just call it the Daily Awakening. And sometimes I'll do some trainings. Usually it's a Q&A. It's an open Q&A that serves everybody, because when somebody asks their question, they'll go, oh my God, I'm so glad you asked that. I'm going through the same thing. And you just watch the chat. That's me, that's me, that's me, that's me.
Yeah.
And these are folks that are just, they would never be the same demographic, but they're the exact same psychographic.
Yeah.
The way they all think. So it's awesome.
That's incredible. And I've gotten to meet some of the people on your calls, and they're just some sweet people. One lady actually joined the Facebook breathing session last night and was very excited. I was really happy to see her. I think it was Daniela and
Yeah.
someone.
Okay. She's on here
And
right
so,
now. She's watching.
oh, is she? Hi, Daniela. So it was amazing that people are eager to learn. Once they meet the right person that can help guide them, who is a true, genuine teacher, who has their best interests in heart to really share and impart, and the student is ready to learn. That's one thing that I find is sometimes people are not ready to learn. They're not ready to change, but then a lot of times they are, or they need to meet the right person that they resonate with that helps them go through that change. I find that that's huge.
And that is huge. And the challenge is as the teacher, we think if somebody leaves our audience, ugh, I'm not good enough. No, they weren't ready for you. Listen, if I had to worry about what everybody was thinking about me, there's not a box small enough that I could crawl in. Because I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm just not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But for the ones I am, they want a second serving. So
yeah.
Tammy Thrasher says it this way best, right? She's the one relationship capital, amazing woman. She says, your vibe will create your tribe. The challenge is we don't let our vibe get out far enough, because I promise you, if you start talking to your community about you having joy and love and all of this, they're going to go, wow, this is stupid. And you watch your viewership go like this until the right people see it.
Yeah.
It's all of a test to see if we're worthy of reaching our own goals.
It's very true. So can you share with us about your secret sauce event and your little sign behind you? I'm curious.
Yeah. So secret sauce is finding that thing that allows you. Too many people have a secret dip. And a dip is what you let people dip into. A sauce is what you cover everything with. And too many people are living their life a dip at a time, and they just become a big dip. But when you work on your secret sauce is what people flock to you for. Kyle Wilson kind of taught us this and taught me this 5 years ago. And I'm finally going, okay, secret sauce. My secret sauce is not a blog. It's maybe video, but my secret sauce is doing this live interaction. I thrive on this. This is where I reside. This is where my energy shows up. So what I want to teach people is when they find where they can reside, where they can swim with effortless energy, when they get into that. There was a gentleman the other day, a week ago Sunday, we kind of went through a little exercise of secret sauce on the Daily Awakening. And he came through and he's crying, telling this story. He's this sexy, macho dancer, salsa dancer, Puerto Rican in New York. And he's breaking down in tears. And he says, I want to create a space to where fatherless children know they're loved. And you can just hear the whole audience gasp. Because he said, I've never said those words in my life. I said, but they've been residing in your life for the last of your life. And now that's your secret sauce. So now we got his secret sauce out. And when he understands that, he can teach dancing to teach fatherless children. He can go give his time. He can do videos. There's not a single dang thing that'll keep him from stepping out into fear, because he wants to create a world where fatherless children know love. He didn't say girls or boys, because he was an orphan. He at a time he dealt with not being able to have that, his dad leaving. So do you think I could talk him out of doing anything when I say, if he asks me, he comes up, I don't know how to do this, fatherless children, get out of his way. That's your secret sauce, that thing that will drive you higher, stronger, with more energy, without being a jerk.
Yes.
And you being in such an essence of your language and your stature and who you are as a vibration. When you find your secret sauce, the world begins to lay itself at your feet. It just does. Yeah. So that's the secret sauce.
And you're having a little event coming up, right, regarding that?
Yeah. So people can go to my website, SeanGMurphy.com/my secret sauce, and you can learn about it. Absolutely. July 1st is when it launches. So.
Good. That's good. I'm sure a lot of people, and I was there too. It's like, what do you do with your life? What purpose do you have, and how do you impact people? So something like this, piecing apart and you find it. I found mine when I started getting people out of major surgeries, like, oh, okay, so this is starting to work. So luckily mine kind of just dropped in my lap, but having someone
Now wait a second. See, that's the 3%er talking. You're the 97%er who hadn't found it. Oh, it kind of dropped in my lap. It drops into everybody's lap if they got their lap set up to receive it.
Which it took me a few years, and but it was receiving, and then getting the guts to follow it too.
Yep. And so, Doc, how do people find you?
So they can find me. They can go to paberinstitute.com and read all about what I do, and send me an email at amy@paberinstitute.com to PABR, Pain Awareness Breathing Relief. And that is what I do with people. And so they can learn a lot more about that and how they can do personalized sessions now that I'm all virtual. And, it's funny, people are learning better through virtual, because based on our conversation earlier when we were talking about people can hear things, but they have to take the chance to receive and learn it and apply it. The virtual forces them to do it. So it's actually more powerful to do virtual sessions because they truly own it.
It would have been something you're like, no, I got to be there with them. I got to be hands-on. Yeah. And I got to tell you, listen, when Doc was teaching me how to breathe, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3". And I was sitting in the chair, and we were in the lounge area, and she's like literally almost climbing on my chest to get me. She's going, lower your chest, relax your chest. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm scared. But as soon as it happened, it's been life-changing. Good. So I would encourage everybody to be on those of you that are in your audience, know about the weeklies. I would encourage my audience, because this is in one of my membership sites that I forward this video to. Yeah. Get on Doc's weekly. You don't have to be 5 nights a week. You know how to breathe, but I would encourage you to learn how to breathe the way that will serve you and free you better than you've ever done before.
Yes. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on here today, Sean. It's been such a fun hour of talking and sharing. I have to say, I'll never be able to dip like a veggie in a dip ever again without laughing. Because of our conversation, I'm like, okay, where's the sauce? I need a sauce. So I really appreciate it. And what was your website one more time that people can learn more about you?
So they can go to SeanGMurphy.com, right? Find me on Facebook or Instagram, Sean G. Murphy Now. You'll usually see me or some loud shirt or something. And on my on my website, you're more than welcome to sign up for something called the 52 Scars. And these are scars we all carry, like, you're not good enough, or I'll believe it when I see it. You know what Glenn Morshower told us about the dirty dozen, right? With time comes wisdom, with age comes wisdom. And he goes, no, I met a lot of old idiots. So it's these scars that we carry, that especially for women, that you're not smart enough, you're not tall enough. These little things, these little words that have been said to you that cause a scar in you that we keep covered up. But Paulo Coelho, in his book, Manuscript Found in a Cross, says the scars you carry are stronger than the sword that made them. So that's what these scars are. They're there to design a way for you to relook at things and see the power that each one of you has. Because I promise you, one of these 52 scars, it's a weekly email that goes out, has just absolutely left a mark on all of us.
I love that. And you'll be getting email from me too, signing up for that list, because I always need to learn more. Got to get rid of those scars.
Well, Doc, thanks for all that you do. Thanks for because you've gone on a hyperspeed education of wanting to get your story out. And you've been this amazing student at every level of like, so when's the last time you thought, well, I need to buy a mic? What kind of mic? Where do I get a mic? And it's not been part of your circle, but you've made it a very important part of your circle so people can hear your message. And for that, I am grateful for you.
Well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate your time. And I know we'll be seeing each other again soon, at least virtually. So all of you guys, thank you guys for joining us today on the Weekend Wellness Hour. Really appreciate your time. Please reach out to Sean. I can't tell you what an amazing person this guy is. And he will change your life. Just simple conversations with him. So join his daily awakening, get on his email list because you will not regret it. So have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Happy Father's Day to all of you guys tomorrow. You guys all need to be celebrated. So take care and we'll see you again next week. Bye.